Christopher Woods is Executive Director of the Owensboro HIV/AIDS Task Force, which provides supportive services for people infected and affected by HIV. Task Force volunteers often find themselves in the difficult situation of having to tell someone for the first time that they are HIV positive. Christopher became a QPR gatekeeper trainer and now trains others to be more aware of the signs and symptoms of a suicidal crisis and how to offer help and hope.
When you're told, here's something that's going to fundamentally change your life forever, and they go through their heads, I'm going to lose if they haven't, I'm going to lose my family, I'm going to have to quit my job, I'm going to have to tell people, and I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, because that is typically the first response. I have a friend, he's been ill for a while. He'd gotten to the point where he could only sit up and talk to you for 2 hours or so at a time before he needed to lay down, sometimes for several hours. He came up here to Louisville to stay with some family for a couple of weeks and go to some other doctor's appointments. We don't know exactly what was said at that doctor's appointment, the first one that he went to. But what we do know is that he left there and he went back to the relative's house. He packed up his things, and halfway between Louisville and Owensboro, he mailed a letter back to them, explaining why he was ending his life.
As a licensed marriage and family therapist, Michael McFarland attended a statewide conference sponsored by the Kentucky Suicide Prevention Group back in 2005. What Michael learned at the conference changed his life. He is now the state suicide prevention coordinator for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
I will never forget sitting in that conference. All of a sudden, this was no longer about being a professional clinician. Hearing people talk about suicide prevention, hearing some of the statistics that were out there, being introduced to information that I had not ever been exposed to before, something happened inside of me where I began to realize, hey, this is where you need to be, Mike. Something clicked inside of me. People are dying, and something needs to be done. When I think about, as a clinician, and suicide prevention, I've got to tell you that it is just not something that is talked about in the clinical circle that much. You talk about all kinds of other elements that are part of preparing a person for clinical service, how to do therapy, how to do assessments, all of those critical factors. But where you don't get much emphasis is around the area of suicide prevention, working with a suicidal client. And yet, those are some of the most common events that a therapist is going to face. Research tells us that typically therapists get less than 2 hours of didactic training around suicide prevention, working with suicidal clients. I wanted to see what we could do from a state standpoint in our state prevention program to provide educational opportunities, workshops that clinicians could participate in to get the competency that's necessary in working with a suicidal client. What is happening in terms of resources as we look at mental health right now is there's a real crisis across our nation. And so in many instances, community-based programs, those network of supports that are out there for people, many times are being withdrawn because of limited resources. That puts the therapist in a more critical role. That means therapists are having to deal with people more in crises.
The Kentucky Suicide Prevention Group, founded in 2002, is made up of people who've lost someone to suicide, people who've attempted suicide or know someone who has attempted, mental health professionals, and others interested in educating Kentuckians on ways to tighten the protective safety net for those at risk of suicide. Membership is open to the public. Some KSPG members have gone on to start suicide prevention coalitions in their own communities.
I think one of the most encouraging things that's happening across the state of Kentucky is the initiative to bring about these community coalitions. I know in Owensboro, Kentucky, we had a group of people come together, law enforcement, professionals in the schools, mental health professionals, to really talk about forming a task force or a coalition.
We're very excited about having a coalition for suicide prevention in Bullitt County because it takes it outside of that one sector of the community. It's not just Bullitt East or the Mount Washington area, but it's the entire Bullitt County area, and not just school people, but school, parents, community liaisons, ministers, community businesses, that we're all in this together.
I believe a critical first step in building a coalition is inviting people who are of like mind and may have been touched by suicide or have a professional interest in suicide to join around the table. In Northern Kentucky, we've been fortunate to have a bereavement counselor who works for a hospice, as well as a funeral director, family member, a counselor from a nearby university. And we were able to gather around the table as a beginning group to talk about what we might do for suicide prevention.
So what can you do to be part of the solution? Most importantly, if you or someone you know is in crisis, seek professional help or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK to be connected with mental health resources in your area. Military veterans can dial the number 1 after calling the Lifeline to be connected with specialized services just for veterans. For suicide prevention gatekeeper training, community and school-based suicide prevention support, or training for mental health clinicians, contact the Kentucky Suicide Prevention Group at 502-564-4456. Our beloved Kentucky, our cherished bluegrass, rolling hills, peaceful living, yet a place where the tragedy of suicide can shatter lives forever. Choose to end the silence, because a life is too much to lose.
We worry about all these other things in Kentucky. We got a major crisis going on right now. It's the second leading cause of death of our youth. We should be ringing every alarm there is out there warning parents. Why aren't we? What are we afraid of?
Watch your children. Watch your friends, your family members. Don't take anything for granted. If you have a gut feeling about something, go with that gut feeling. Because 99% of the time, that gut feeling is right. So don't be afraid to ask that question. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Or are you thinking about killing yourself?
Some time ago, someone said to me, what an awful way suicide was to end a life, and what an awful waste of life it was. And that hurt me, and it hurt me deeply. My mom's life was not a waste.
I don't think that there's ever a point when you can dismiss someone's life just because of who you think you are. Their life has value. You know, they have their stories to tell. And in their stories, you know, there may be a kernel of something for you, but their life has value.
Being involved in suicide prevention and advocacy, to me, not only brings healing to me, but it also brings purpose to my mom's life. And it, in some ways, helps me to keep her candle burning.